Hi guys, this is Hero. How's everyone doing today? So today I'm going over, just because you are not aware of something doesn't mean that you are not responsible for the thing that you are not aware about. Before I get into the details here, let me give you a quick example. Let's just say every week I can consume an X amount of sugar in order to maintain my body weight, right? Now, let's just say all of a sudden the person who's making my food starts putting double sugar in all my food. Okay. Now, let's just say for some reason I don't taste it, I don't see it go in, they didn't tell me, right? So I'm not aware all around that there's extra sugar going in my food, that I'm consuming double sugar. But does that mean that I'm not responsible for consuming double sugar? Absolutely not. Over the long term, I'm going to see the effects of consuming double sugar, right? Or let's just say I'm on a workout plan and I can have ice cream and donuts once a week. But let's just say for some reason I forgot I had it and I have it again. So I wasn't aware that I already have it. Well, if I had it twice, maybe over one time, you might not notice, but over time, you will still be responsible for eating the ice cream and donuts twice a week for all those times that you accidentally were not aware that you had already consumed it that week, right? I'll give you another quick example before I start. We all love our friendships, our relationships, things like that. Now, there are certain aspects or character traits or all around things about certain people that we are not aware about, right? And this goes for anybody, even ourselves. We're not even aware of everything of ourselves. But there's certain things about other people that we're not aware about, right? You can even include yourself in this list. But just because you're not aware about certain things about certain people doesn't mean that you're not responsible for the actions of those people if you choose to partake in certain activities or discussions or whatever with those people, right? So, and I'll get into more specifics examples with that example in a second, but I think you guys at a high level know what I'm trying to say. Now, one of the reasons here, right, that we don't like to be responsible is that we always like to have a victim mindset, right? And I'm not saying all of us do, but one of the reasons why we could not like being responsible is because of a victim mindset, right? It's really easy to never be at fault. It's really easy to blame someone else, right? Oh, this person is, not being smart, and because of that, it's affecting me, right? Rather than me taking accountability overall for the whole situation, right? Another thing is that we enjoy quick wins, right? So we sometimes might not want to be. So this one had to do with not being responsible. This one had to do with more not being aware, right? We don't want to be aware of certain actions or certain things that we're saying, whatever, because it gives us mental pleasure, right? We're temporarily willing to trade mental pleasure now for long-term pain down the line, okay? For example, you could say something, right? Out of anger, out of frustration, whatever. It will give you very temporary mental pleasure now, right? However, over the long term, it could cause you much disaster and much pain. So this is one example of why we try to avoid, not being aware, right? So as you can see here, your ego is naturally hardwired to not want to be aware or not want to be responsible to an extent, right? And the one thing you have to understand is that ignorance is not bliss to a large extent once limiting beliefs are removed. Okay. Ignorance is not bliss, right? Just because you don't know something, right? Just because I don't know that, the restaurant I'm going to is adding double cheese in my food and that's why it's tasting so good. That's not, actually resourceful to me, right? It's not actually bliss once limiting beliefs are removed. This is a huge thing. Once limiting beliefs are removed. We all have limiting beliefs, right? We, like, for example, in the restaurant example, I could say, oh, eating out at this place makes me happy, right? But once that limiting belief is removed and I realize I can be happy without necessarily going to that restaurant, right? And then I'm aware of the fact that, they're putting extra cheese and fat in my food or whatever the situation, extra salt, whatever, right? Now all of a sudden it's not bliss. I know that this, let's just say I have some health problem or I'm a little overweight or something. That's not that's not actually blissful to not know that there's extra stuff in my food, because it is actually contributing to a long-term problem. But it all comes down to the quick win, right? Once your limiting beliefs are removed, see, limiting beliefs help fuel quick wins and this victim mindset, okay? Now, once you remove this, you're not going to get as much mental pleasure from your quick wins, right? So you're not going to be as willing to trade in the instant mental pleasure now for the long-term pain in the future, okay? So that's that, right? Another thing you have to understand here is that there are no perfect decisions most of the time, okay? So before I continue on hammering this point, I want to point out that we're constantly becoming more and more aware over time, okay? And it is impossible to be supremely aware, right? Like, unless you're like God or something like that, right? Or it's like some supreme being, and I highly doubt that that is you or anybody that you know. So you're never going to make perfect decisions, right? And you are ultimately not in control. That's the other thing you have to understand. Because if you understand this, that, hey, just because you're not aware doesn't mean you're not responsible. So you naturally want to be like, oh, yeah, okay, great. I want to be aware as possible so I can be responsible as possible. But you have to understand that, hey, you're never going to be perfect, right? You are a human being. You're never going to be fully aware, and therefore you're never going to be fully in control. Okay, there are so many aspects all around that are happening that you are just not aware of. You're not capable of being aware of in your human mind. Okay, it's just something that you also have to accept. There's a quote, right? It goes something like, someone who is kind of at the relatively early, stages of their spiritual journey constantly blames others. Someone who's like halfway there blames himself, and someone who's kind of arrived realized that there's nobody to blame, right? And basically I don't know if that's the exact quote, but basically what that means is the more elevated you get, the more internal you go as far as solving your problems, right? So you're not kind of blaming other people, you're blaming yourself, and then you realize that even yourself is not to blame, that this is just the way that things were just naturally meant to unfold karmically and things like that. Now, this doesn't mean that you don't give effort or try at all, right? That's not what that means, but I'll move on. But I just wanted to explain that quote to you. Now, the next is that you first want to have acceptance and then ways to improve, right? So the quote that I just said, you want to first accept results, right? Whenever things happen, you want to accept it, right? If you have some poor result in life, you accept it, and then you find ways to improve, right? And the ways to improve can be internal or external ways to improve. I'll give you an example. Let's just say the two things that I like to go for is your body image and your relationships, right? It's basically in astrology the 1-7 axis, right? It has a lot to do with you, okay? So rather than, let's just say you're having relationship problems, right? Rather than blaming other people, right, all the time, you first want to accept problems, right? Because there will always be problems. You don't need everything to be perfect, and you don't need to blame others, yourself, or others, right, for any problems. But once you do accept situations, and then why is it important to accept before you find ways to improve? Because once you accept, then you find ways to improve groundedly. Versus if you're not accepting, then you're finding ways to improve ungroundedly, okay? So once you accept and you're grounded and you're okay with the result, then you find ways to improve. Now, the ways to improve, you ideally want to look in first. What could I have done to improve this, right? Now, if after your grounded conclusion, you realize that, hey, this person is just not it, I need to leave, okay, fine, that's that. But you need to be really careful because you, at the end of the day, attracted this person initially, right? So there's something that was drawing you two to each other, okay? Was it some, ego satisfaction that you saw in this person and then they saw something in you, something like that? I don't know, right? But there could be many ways to improve. But you want to accept first so that you're as grounded as possible, and then you want to go within and see what you could have done in a situation, okay, to improve. Okay, and then just remember there's no perfect decisions, and then you are not in control, okay? What you don't know could hurt you, right? I think the sugar example kind of hit home here, but you can apply this for anything, right? If you are working really hard at a job and your leadership is not respecting you, that is a problem, even if you don't know it, right? Because for a wide variety of reasons, right? You'd rather now you can ask the question of, okay, well, they're not just gonna outright tell you they don't like you or they're treating you bad or something, right? Well, this is where all around awareness comes in, right? You want to be as aware as possible and remove possible limiting beliefs that could be causing you not to be aware of, for example, like your leadership not liking you, right? Let's just say you have a limiting belief of, you never really got validation growing up and things like that, right? So you need to remove the limiting belief of, hey, it's okay if I don't get validation. So you're not constantly, for example, in this possible hypothetical scenario, searching for that validation from your corporate leadership, who in this example will never give it to you, right? Just an example before I move on. Acknowledge consequences and patterns, okay? You want to apply this for ways to improve and acceptance, right? You want to see, hey, okay, things that happen, patterns or consequences, accept them, right? Accept that this is happening over and over, right? You become aware, then you accept it, and then you say, hey, these certain patterns or these certain consequences, whatever, this certain rhythm that's happening in my life, once you acknowledge it, then you can accept and find the ways to improve it, okay? Lastly, we have accept consequences, ignore unnecessary perks for growth, okay? You don't want to do the opposite. You don't want to attach yourself to unnecessary perks and ignore consequences, right? You want to do the opposite. When things happen, you could say, oh, hey, how did this happen, right? And then if things good happen that were kind of like flukes, you could kind of ignore them, because let me give you an example. I don't know how many guys are familiar with the game of poker, but let's just say in poker, I don't care if this is the most spiritual topic or not. I'm going to use the example of poker. Let's just say poker, you have, it's a card game. So you have, there's certain good players and there's certain bad players, right? Regardless of the stigma of whether it's all luck or not luck, I'm telling you, there's definitely some skill involved in the game, okay? If you get lucky with certain cards that come, you actually didn't really earn that win, right? Same with basketball, right? If you just got super lucky on some shot or somebody got hurt or something like that, you did not actually win that properly, even though you got a win, right? You don't really want to over-attach yourself to those wins, right? And in real life, just FYI, if anybody over-attaches himself to something that they don't usually get, that's usually not a sign of great character, right? Let's just say there's somebody who over-attaches themselves to a potential intimate partner that is completely out of their league, right? You will notice they will not shut up at all about that person, and most likely they will constantly brag, and you can definitely tell this is something that they're not used to, right? Even if and most of the time it's because it was a fluke. Something happened where it just lined up, but it's probably not going to last very long, okay? Probably. Same thing here, right? Whenever you kind of get these flukes in life, you don't really want to attach yourself too much to them, right? Because there's no growth in that. You didn't actually earn it. You didn't actually, like, for example, in a basketball win, if you just made some crazy lucky shot, you didn't actually become more skilled over time and became an actual better player. You just made a shot and won a game by accident, right? Same thing with poker, right? You didn't actually, you just got lucky that a certain card came right at the end, and that is the exact card you needed to win, right? There's no actual, and there was a very low percentage of that happening. There's no actual skill involved, right? Same thing with a potential partner, right? If some like fluke one-time interaction happens or something like that, you did not actually, develop any mutual, respect and affection for each other deep down, right? There's just something that just caused an extremely temporary spark maybe, and you're getting attached to that, right? Because this is not something that you're used to. This is not something that you are capable of, attracting long-term on a regular basis, right? And the opposite, you don't want to ignore consequences, right? bad stuff is constantly happening over and over, you don't want to just shove it aside and just blame it on your bad luck, right? You want to, fully acknowledge and accept this, right? And if it truly was a one-time thing, fine. But there's probably something that you could have also always been a little bit more aware about or something like that, right? So that is what it is for this video. You always want to be more aware, right, over and over again, because what you're not aware of doesn't mean that you're not responsible for it, okay? And now you might be wondering, oh, well, how do I become more aware? I have plenty of videos on how to become more aware, but overall it boils down to slowing down your mind, right? And how can you do that? You can not use social media. You can cut out any garbage habits you have, like drinking and smoking. All this stuff is overstimulating your mind, right? TV, I think I just said social media, negative people, things like that, right? Do stuff that takes some time and is fulfilling, right? Like you could possibly like go on like a hike or something. Like, you hiked up this mountain for 5 miles, right? And then you accomplished this, right? And that would take some time. That's an example. Or like, working out at the gym or something like that. Meditation, things like that. Things that slow down your mind and that actually gradually over time you have to work towards something to achieve, a result, a fulfillment. That is what's going to kind of slow down your mind and get your mind in a mindset. I'm not looking for quick wins and becoming more aware, right? But I have plenty of videos on this, okay? So I think that's it for this video. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to let me know. And until next time, I will talk to everyone later. Thank you all very, very much for watching.